Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We will get started right now. I appreciate you taking the time. I know there's lots that you're all thinking about and doing as we prepare for the receipt of your ESSER funds. It's a beautiful day out as well, so I know we're competing with 70-plus degree temperatures all across the state, so we feel even more honored that you were able to join us today. This training session, it will be recorded. We appreciate you joining with us live today, but if there are any sections that you may not have quite heard or maybe missed a little bit, please know that you can refer to the recording that we will post on our website after this. I just want to thank everyone. We were able to get our application into our U.S. Education Department as quickly as possible. I believe we were one of the very first states to submit, and we did receive notification yesterday that we have been approved to receive the $33.3 million approximately from the U.S. Department of Ed, or via the U.S. Department of Ed, but actually from our U.S. Congress when they passed the CARES Act portion of the relief for the COVID-19 pandemic. I appreciate all of your patience with us. What we will commit to you today is that we will be providing the opportunity for you to complete a very simple, efficient, streamlined process of certification and application package that we will deliver to you. Our intent is to deliver this money out to you as swiftly, painlessly, and efficiently as possible to ensure that you are receiving the funds that you need in order to deal with the issues and situations that have arisen because of COVID-19 pandemic. I will be turning the majority of this over to Assistant Superintendent Lori Matsky to do the retraining agenda. But please know that our intent is to make sure that we are delivering this funding to you in a way that meets your needs most efficiently without a lot of the bureaucratic red tape that too often accompanies many of these situations and these opportunities. So if there is a way that we can help you, please, our number one priority is customer service in all that we do. There are certain things that we must do that our state legislature and our federal government require of us, but remembering that our priority in all of this is to assist you so you can assist your students and families in achieving the goals and objectives of education. So thank you. With that, I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Matsky.
Thank you, Superintendent Baszler. Good afternoon, everyone. If I can draw everyone's attention to the agenda, we're going to put it up on the screen, and you may have also downloaded it when we sent out the constant contact reminder for today's training. It had a link to the agenda, so you may have a paper copy, or we're also going to put it up on the screen, and we'll just talk a little bit about our purpose today for this training. So as indicated on the agenda there, that third bullet there, the state application. As Superintendent Baszler said, we have received approval on our state application. If you would like to see what it looks like, it is posted on our ESSER funds website, and there's also a live link there on the agenda, so you can take a look at that. So we are just going to today walk through the application process as far as what LEAs need to do to access these funds. We're going to talk a little bit about our monitoring plan that we're required to implement. Rebecca Pollard from our fiscal office is going to explain how districts use the web grant system, and Ellison is going to provide some information on private schools, and then we'll end with just providing some information on the guidance that we've created. If you have any questions, please use the chat box to type them in, and we will address them at the end of the call. So as Superintendent Baszler stated, DPI has created a quick, streamlined process for districts to apply for these ESSER funds. The application is summarized in a package consisting of parts A through D. We are going to put the application package up on the screen and walk through it together, and then it will be made available for all of you to download and see on our website following this training. So again, our application package is being called the Certification and Agreement for Funding under ESSER. And we will just walk through this together. We are working to get it put up on the screen. Can we enlarge it or can they see?
I'm gonna try it. I'm not sure how to do.
Okay, well, we will just walk through it. Hopefully, you can see parts of it. And like I said, if not, you will be able to download this package immediately following today's training. And so just to give a little bit of background information, again, I just want to reiterate that the state was required to use the Title I funding formula to distribute these funds. And so districts that received a Title I allocation during this school year, 2019-20, are the ones that were eligible to receive an LEA ESSER allocation. Now, there are 16 districts that were ineligible for funding this year. If you are one of those districts and you're participating on today's webinar, this information also applies to you. We have determined that we are going to assist these districts with our state set aside. A letter will be coming to you very shortly, hopefully tomorrow at the latest on Monday. So if you're listening, that's great because this information will apply to you as well. Good news on the timeline. Districts will have their spending window for these dollars will be from March 13th, 2020 to September 30th, 2022. So the U.S. Department of Ed did allow pre-award costs, and you can go back in time to March 13th in case you had to purchase some technology or if you've incurred food or transportation costs that weren't covered by the state, you will be able to claim funds from March 13th all the way to September 30th, 2022. We are going to be walking through some of the appendices, but I cannot stress strongly enough how important it is for all of you to familiarize yourself with Appendix B. That is the use of funds as outlined by the U.S. Department. Again, we strongly recommend that you print a copy of Appendix B, the use of funds, and refer to that often. Again, we have this very streamlined process, tremendous flexibility, but as long as you are spending the funds as outlined in Appendix B, you will be good. So to continue on in the application package, it walks through there the certification and agreement instructions, which consist of parts A through D. Part A is simply a cover page where the district has to fill in the district authorized rep some general information, and the authorized rep needs to sign it. Part B is just a set of assurances, so we ask that you read through those, and then again, the district authorized rep signs. Part C is probably the most critical part of the application, and that contains 2 narrative questions, which we're going to go through in more detail in a minute. And then Part D is another set of assurances, which the authorized rep needs to sign. Now, the certification and assurances, parts A through D, is the application that an LEA is required to complete in order to access this ESSER funding. Once you have that complete, you simply submit it as a PDF document to the link provided in the document. It's DPI Assistant Soup at nd.gov, or you can click on the direct link there and submit a PDF document. So again, just reiterating, going through the different sections. Part A, very simple there. You'll see highlighted in blue the sections that you are to fill out, and then the authorized rep signs. Part B is just a set of fiscal and reporting assurances. Please read them carefully and then have the authorized representative sign. Please refer yourself to Part C, use of funds. Listed here are all the ways that an LEA may spend these dollars, again, as outlined in Appendix B. There's a checkbox for every single way that you can utilize the funds. So before districts can apply for the ESSER funding, you're going to have had those conversations, with your school board, with your staff, and have a clear understanding of how you intend to spend these funds. Then, when you are ready, you can complete this application, and in Part C here, you check all the boxes that apply, and that could be in just one area, or that could be in many areas. So just to give a few examples, I know many of you have contacted us and you have asked if you could purchase Chromebooks or iPads way back in March when we started the distance learning. And so yes, of course, that is an allowable expenditure. You can go back to March 13th. So if you purchased any kind of technology, you would just click that educational technology box there and give a description in the text box. Or some of you are planning to do summer school to possibly help with this learning leg. So in that case, you would go down and click the box that says ESSER, as summer school is an allowable activity under ESSER, and describe in the text box. Our DPI Special Education Office released today, it's posted on our website, some extended school year guidance for those of you who want to work with your special ed population, possibly over the summer, to help them stay caught up. And so if that is one, you would just click on the box, added needs of at-risk population. Many of you are thinking ahead and coordinating and planning for another possible long-term closure. So some of you have contacted us, is it okay to purchase online curriculum or supports and programs? Yes, that is certainly allowable. So you'll see about halfway down there, it says coordinate long-term closures. You would simply click on that box and explain. So after you have checked the boxes that apply, then you go down to the text box and describe all the areas marked in detail. For a quick approval, number one, please be as detailed as possible. And then number two, if you clicked multiple boxes and have multiple ways you're spending these dollars, please bullet them out separately just so that it is as clear as possible so that we can expeditiously approve your application. So that is narrative one. Narrative two is to describe the LEA's plan for meeting each student's learning needs when they return to the classroom. We know that individual students will be in dramatically different places academically once we return to school. And so it is going to be imperative for our teachers to be assessing and determining where each student's needs are. So please explain the process that you are going to go through to assess your students, determine where everyone is at, and then take plans of action to make sure that that all students are brought up to grade level and that you're helping anyone who may have suffered from this learning lag during this pandemic. So that is Part C, to just address those two narrative questions. Part D is just another set of assurances. Please read through them carefully, and then once again, the authorized representative signs. That is the complete application process. A through D, very simple. Again, just making sure that you are addressing those narrative questions in detail and being as clear as you possibly can. Attached to the packet is Appendix A, which are the allocation amounts for each district. Again, those 16 districts will be receiving an allocation memo tomorrow, letting them know what your amount is. And then Appendix B is that so important list of allowable activities. Again, it's a nice, neat one page directly from the law. We recommend that you print it, post it by your desk, and refer to it often and make sure that everything you're doing falls into one of those allowable uses categories. Again, once you have completed parts A through D, just simply submit a PDF of this to that email address that has listed. Immediately following today's training, all North Dakota school superintendents will be receiving an email from Superintendent Basler. Within this email, you will be able to link to this application package and the guidance that we will also be going through. So please look for that to occur in your email, and then you will have access to this form to complete. As far as the approval process, as Superintendent Basler noted, it's going to be a top priority for DPI to quickly review and approve these certification packages. The key to a quick approval is to provide sufficient detail in Part C. Once your application package has been approved, the authorized representative and the business manager will both receive an email with an attachment of your approval letter with key information. Please make sure you keep a copy of that approval letter so that you have it for auditing purposes. So that kind of summarizes our application and approval process to get access to these funds. I want to move next on the agenda to the internal control and monitoring plan and provide a little bit of information here. Even though DPI has created this streamlined process to apply for the funding, the CARES Act and these ESSER funds still have some reporting and monitoring requirements. This information that I'm going to go over is also addressed in our guidance document, so you will also be able to see this in writing once we make that document live on our website. But the CARES Act requires that state education agencies oversee the ESSA spending within 60 days. As of yesterday, since that was our approval date, we have to submit to the U.S. Department of Ed our monitoring plan to ensure these funds are being used for allowable purposes. So we just wanted to give you a little bit of information about what that is going to all entail. The CARES Act requires that LEAs report to the SEA on a quarterly basis. We have not seen detailed information yet as far as what those quarterly reports must all encompass. However, we do know that you're going to need to report quarterly on the amount of funds received, how much funds you have spent, providing a list of the activities that you have conducted with these CARE dollars, and providing information on any contracts that you've entered into. Once we have more information from the USDE, we will provide more detailed information to you as far as what the quarterly report is going to look like and when the first one will be due. Now, in addition to the quarterly report, again, we're going to have to outline in our plan to the USDE how we are going to provide oversight on these funds. Some ways that we are going to include in our correspondence to them is, number one, through our web grant system that Rebecca Pollard will be talking about in a little bit. That is where you are going to go in and claim your reimbursement. So we will be able to use that web grant system to be able to share with the U.S. Department of Ed how much has been spent to date, in what categories have the funds been spent in, etc. We will only ask the district to submit a copy of your ledger when you request final reimbursement to claim these funds. So if you're going to be submitting multiple reimbursement claims as you spend it, you only have to submit your ledger when you do the final claim. And so we'll have that to review to inform the USDE that that's another way we'll be able to ensure that you only spent them on allowable activities. Now, for the private school portion only, we will probably need to conduct some desk reviews because we will not be able to see that information on the web grant system. Since the public district has to maintain control, only your local records will have the money that was spent or the services provided to private schools. So we'll probably be doing some desk reviews for those districts that have private schools. And then, of course, the quarterly reports will be another method that we'll be able to utilize to ensure allowability and to be able to provide information to the USDE. So you can see that there is still accountability built into the ESSER funds. North Dakota has simply chosen to utilize a back-end reporting process for accountability in lieu of a very detailed application process up front. We participated in a webinar yesterday where they had North Dakota and Louisiana share their process because we were polar opposites. And so that state was taking a much more detailed application process versus a quick expedited process. So again, we wanted to get these funds out to you quickly. That was Superintendent Baszler's priority. And then we will simply be able to do our reporting by collecting information on the back end. Bottom line, as long as you are only using funds for allowable activities as defined in Appendix B, you will be fine. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Rebecca Pollard, who works in our fiscal office, and she is going to provide some information on our web grant system because that is where the districts are going to claim reimbursement. And so she will walk you through that process.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, Shauna? Lori?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Sorry, just wanted to make sure. And if you just want to put the agenda back up there, Shauna, I'm not going to go through every detail of web grants because will be creating and releasing a video that will walk you through exactly looking at your own grant within the system, how to do a request for funds, your reimbursements, things like that. So primarily what I want to stress today is that thankfully for us, there was no formal application or, you just have your certification and agreement for funding process here. So you won't have a budget. You'll just get a flat awarded amount based on that formula, as Lori said. Your reimbursements, however, do need to be requested by category. So we're not going to be collecting your ledgers throughout or asking you to attach all of that. But when you go in to fill out your reimbursement request, you will see the same, ND Farms categories that you're currently familiar with. So you'll claim by category. And then at the end, it is up to you and it is your responsibility to make sure that your claims and ledgers match. We will not be monitoring it throughout, but we will at the end, as Lori said, that we will be requesting the ledger there. So you need to make sure that your spend is allowable, as she stressed multiple times, and you will be requesting by category, but there'll be no budget amendments, no formal budget submitted, nothing like that. So it'll be very, very streamlined and a very quick process for you. The number one thing that we have to do today is we need everyone to get registered for web grants. We've had a ton that have, so thank you if you responded. If you are a business manager and you will be filing for these reimbursement funds, you need to be registered. If you are a verified signer for your school district, whomever your board has authorized as your signer, they need to be registered for web grants as well. Every individual who will be doing anything in there needs to be registered on their own. So please start with that process. We've gotten a ton added, so thank you if you have. And as Lori said, that once you receive your notice that you have been approved and they are, reviewed your packet, then there'll be directions in there for where to go. And I'm sure that will include the link to the video on exactly how to see and do all of this. We will be available for technical support, but it is a very, very simple process. That's all I have.
Okay, we will turn it over to Ann Ellison, who's going to walk through some of the private school requirements.
Okay, so if you are new to this conversation, I would encourage you to go back to our very first webinar on CARES Act, or ESSER funds, as they're now being called, as we went through more details of what's required for non-public equitable services, and in particular, those responsibilities of the SEA. I'm going to highlight real quickly 3 sections. First will be the assurances that the LEA or the district has to agree to in the application, the equitable share for services and how that allocation will be posted, and then those remaining LEA responsibilities that exist. So first, the assurances in the application. So as Lori Matsky went through the application, there are a set of assurances that a public district would agree to and how it impacts that non-public school. So as an LEA completes an application, it says that it will provide those equitable services to non-public schools, teachers, and students. If you do not have a non-public school in your district, then that obviously doesn't apply to you. The district also agrees that it will have thorough, timely, meaningful consultation to make decisions on budgeting, use of funds, and how those services would be provided. So non-public schools should have heard from the public school district by now, so they have an idea of how they would like to be providing those services to that non-public building. The public district has to ensure that it maintains control of the funds, meaning that those funds are never paid to the non-public school, rather they're services that are provided. Any materials, equipments, and property that's purchased is the property of that public district, and that the services that are going to be provided with those funds are actually provided by the public district, or it could be a contracted service that the public district contracts for, and that service is then provided to the non-public. So those are the core assurances that are provided. For equitable services, or how much services a non-public gets, we refer to that as equitable services, or it's also known as like, what's the allocation? It's important to note in italics that the proportional share calculation, it is not an amount of money. It is not cash. It's not a check that goes to the non-public school. Rather, it tells the amount of the level of service that the public district is required to provide to that non-public school and to the children attending that school. So a couple things regarding those equitable service amounts or allocations. So we are in the process of determining that equitable share amount. We are using Title I information to develop the public school district's amounts, but we do have a question in the queue with the U.S. Department of Education regarding the calculation method that we must use for that non-public equitable share. So we're waiting for that response, and we'll be able to proceed when we receive it. As soon as we receive that, our finance office, Jamie Mertz, will run equitable share set-asides that will be posted on the department's website, and DPI will send out an email to those districts that have non-public schools, as well as to those participating non-public school leaders, on what that equitable share will be. So it will be published on our department website and communicated through email. In the meantime, there are a few things that the LEA could be doing to be proactive in how these equitable services roll out. The first is the letter of intent. Many districts and non-public schools have completed their letters of intent. We are still missing a couple from districts around the state. So non-public schools in Belcourt, a couple in Fargo, one in Watford City, and one in Minot. We have yet to receive confirmation of yes or no that they'd like to receive services of ESSER funds, or no, they would not. If you are in one of those districts and have further questions, please reach out to me or Shauna Greff, and we can let you know what the next steps would need to be or who we need to hear from. The other thing that public districts could be doing is scheduling that consultation meeting. So as I mentioned before, the public district and the non-public need to meet to determine what those equitable services would be spent on. You could have some initial conversations on what, how you'd like to proceed. Now, some of the districts might be saying, how do we do that without our equitable share? I would look at your Title I equitable share as a rough idea from this last school year, the 1920 school year, and that will give you a rough idea of what that equitable share may be. And then lastly, working together on those budgeting elements. Keep in mind, as Lori mentioned also with the, as Lori mentioned also with the monitoring, the LEA must maintain all documentation demonstrating that ongoing consultation. and that there has been work between both entities. It's imperative that the district maintains that, as there may be desk audits or elements like that that were expected for implementation. Lori, would you like to pause and answer some of these questions before we move into the guidance?
Let's get through the guidance and then that concludes it, and then we can go through all of the questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so I know the guidance is up on the screen, but it's tiny. Again, the link to access the guidance will be live immediately following this training, and we are certainly not going to go through it page by page. We just wanted to let you know that in fact we have created guidance regarding these ESSER funds and the whole entire process. And again, it will be available here very soon. And we just wanted to go through and highlight a few things within the guidance. So the guidance, again, will walk you through the application process, talk about allocations. On the second page, it kind of goes through the grant period, reiterates that you have from March 13th to September 30th, 2022 to spend the funds. One point I wanted to highlight is school board approval. DPI highly recommends that districts provide the LEA certification and agreement package as well as your allocation amount for review at your next school board meeting. However, there's nothing in the regulations that require the district to receive approval in school board before the application package is submitted. I knew that would be an important question because you're not allowed to submit your consolidated application package until you have school board approval. Again, there's nothing that says you have to have approval before submission. However, that's obviously something we recommend taking to the school board and getting their approval on. One more section I just wanted to highlight, and that is the recommendations best practice section. So if you are one of the lucky few that maybe has addressed all of your emergency needs and you don't have any need to spend these funds on COVID-specific related issues, it is highly recommended that you use this opportunity to get these additional dollars to look at the learning loss that has been caused due to this national emergency. So several recommendations are listed there. Number one, supporting your at-risk population. You know, looking at your homeless students, English learners, students with disabilities. You're highly encouraged to use your funds for these vulnerable populations. Obviously, supporting teacher and learning. There's some ideas provided in the guidance on how you could use Title II funds, Title IV funds, IDEA funds, Perkins funds, braiding all of these various funds to support your students and staff. Also wanted to highlight a new DPI resource center that's been created. A team of staff compiled resources that can be used to support educators and families during this time. And so it was just went live a few days ago. We've provided a link to this new resource center. Also preparing for the possibility of a future distance learning needs. We don't know what's going to happen in the fall. We don't know if there's going to be a resurgence of cases and if we'll have to revert back to distance learning. So we strongly encourage you to use these funds to prepare for this to happen again in the future so that, you know, in the event it does, you're prepared. And then obviously providing supplemental student learning opportunities, looking at summer school, tutoring, after school programming, anything you can do to help students catch up if they have fallen behind. So again, looking at your emergency needs brought forth by COVID, and then if you have those addressed, really focusing on the student learning piece. Rebecca, did you have anything else you wanted to highlight from the guidance on web grants?
No, I think we're okay. I mean, there's going to be a lot of training with a video that's provided as well as technical assistance available. I know we didn't actually look at the system today, but I feel like we've gotten so much information that kind of when we get to that point, we'll get to that point.
Okay, Anne, you want to take over then and address some other points throughout the guidance?
Yes, I will. So recognizing that the guidance is small, and you can't necessarily read it. This will be available for you, but I'd like to just highlight some of the pieces that Lori spoke about, starting on page 3, which is our use of funds. As Lori indicated, this funding source, it is broad, it is flexible, and the main point of it is to help our districts prepare, prevent, and respond to COVID-19. Now, it's important to recognize that this is emergency relief. So there are some expenses that right now, we didn't have enough funding to pay for our busing, to get meals out, for instance. But we want you to also be mindful that we don't know what this fall, winter, and next spring look like as well. So some districts may elect to reserve some of this ESSER funds for future expenses, not future beyond fall of 2021, however. So just be mindful that, we don't always know what the future may bring. If you look in CARES Act section 18003, there are a slew of activities mentioned, plus a lot of other federal programs mentioned. What I'd like to do now is to go through just highlighting some of the CARES Act specific activities that are allowable, because looking at a lot of the questions that come in the Q&A, where do we code this? Where might this fit? I think it's those beginning elements of the CARES Act or ESSER funds allowable uses that those activities would fit. So the first bullet of allowable activities, and if you look at the LEA application, it might be very, very similar. It's the first bullet on the bottom of page 3. It's for the coordination and preparedness for you to work and to respond to coronavirus activities. So what did you need to do to coordinate with the LEA, maybe tribal entities, maybe your local health department, but how do you prepare, respond, and what is those prevention measures going forward? The second allowable activity on page 4, the top of page 4, highlights that the district may allow budgets to go to individual school buildings for those principals to meet the needs that are unique to each of their individual schools. The third bullet outlines activities that address the needs for our most vulnerable populations, which may include free and reduced lunch, students with disabilities, homeless, English language learners. So again, a broad, flexible category to meet the needs of your at-risk, most vulnerable students. The next bullet outlines your allowable funding for preparedness and response efforts that happened within the LEA. Next is for training and professional development for the sanitation of your schools and how do you minimize the infectious disease issues, or how do you maintain that control? And to partner with that, not only training for that, but those actual costs for sanitizing and cleaning your district and those buildings that are owned by your district. Next, some planning and coordination expenses for long-term closures. This is how you may be able to recoup your costs for meals or transportation, those technology expenses for online learning, or how are you providing services with students for disabilities that are distance learning. So there's another really flexible area for those long-term closure expenses. There's also an allowable area that allows you to purchase technology or meet those adaptive and assistive technology needs of your students and or teaching staff. There's an allowable funding source for mental health services and supports. I think it's important to note that it doesn't necessarily say just for students. It may also be pertinent for a district to provide mental health supports for the district employees as well. Planning and implementing activities such as summer learning, supplemental before and after school programs. But as Lori mentioned, what about that learning loss? What about those students that haven't responded to distance learning? What supports might be provided to them? And then lastly, other activities. So other activities that a district could justify. So I think that answers a lot of the questions in the Q&A, but we'll go through those as well. I'm also going to very briefly highlight more opportunities where you could utilize these funds. So the CARES Act language says, in addition to those bullets I read, you could use funds on ESSA, IDEA, Perkins, and then some other acronyms that I don't even know how to say, but like things like McKinney-Vento, homeless assistance, adult literacy. So on pages 5 through 9 of the guidance, it walks through the particular program, if it's an ESSA or IDEA related program. It provides a quick summary of that particular program and then provides a link where you could get more information on that particular program or those expenses. So as Lori Matzke also mentioned, it's a really fun, flexible framework, and say that all your COVID needs have been addressed, but you'd like to do a Title I summer school program. You could utilize those Title I activities to be that vehicle for your summer school program. Or let's say you wanted additional support for before or after school programming. 21st Century Learning Centers is available as one of the allowable ESSA programs. There's also funds or programs for family engagement, homeless children and youth, students with disabilities, the Individual Education Act, Adult Ed and GED, as well as Carl Perkins. There's a lot of different programs that you could utilize to find activities to meet your needs. It's important to note, and this is on page 9 of the guidance, that there are some areas where it says in statute that things are not allowable. So all activities with all federal funds, we always have to make sure that they're reasonable, allowable, and allocable against the program that you are implementing. There are some things, however, as outlined in ESSER funds, that cannot be paid. So for instances of these, and they're clearly outlined on page 9, bonuses, merit pay, or similar expenses cannot be paid out of this funding source. Subsidizing or offsetting salaries and benefits cannot be paid. And we really don't think that that should be an issue, because our governor was able to keep North Dakota whole for their state aid payment as well as your local tax dollars. So we really feel that our districts are assuring that they're able to keep everyone whole, and these federal funds would not need to subsidize a group of staff. Another element that it's clearly outlined as an unallowable expense is expenditures related to local or state unions, membership organizations, and associations. So those would be, your local teachers union, administrative groups, or membership organizations. That is not the intended use of these funds. The next section of the guidance talks about non-public equitable services. I'm not going to go through that again, as we went through that earlier, but I do think it's important to note that the U.S. Department of Education is working on additional equitable service guidance as this rolls out, and so we anticipate that their guidance will help us to make informed decisions as we move forward. The coding and tracking of funds, which many people were asking, hey, how do I code this? How do I bring it in for revenue? Those codes are listed in the guidance, and we'll also include them when we go through the chat questions. And then lastly, it talks about monitoring and reporting, and Lori Matzke just covered that. So those are the core elements of the guidance, and we believe it has either the information in there or links to additional information where you could find those activities or those answers that you need. I believe now we will pause and go to our Q&A box.
Thank you, Ann. So yes, that concludes the information that we wanted to share with you. We are going to quickly just go through and answer the questions so that those who listen to the recorded training will be able to hear what questions were asked and our answer. So Lisa will just read those off and we'll quickly go through those.
Is ESSER and CARES the same dollars?
Yes, they are the same dollars. The CARES Act is the bigger, broader act that includes multiple funds. You may have heard that our governor also received funding under the CARES Act. And then the ESSER funds refers to the funding that the state educational agencies received for school districts.
Will private school estimated allocations for equitable services be posted on the DPI website?
Yes, we are going to be very transparent throughout this whole process. And we are waiting to receive additional guidance on the private school requirements. And once we do, we'll publish the private school equitable share amount. Again, private schools don't receive the funding, but that is the amount that you will receive in equitable services, and we will post that and everything else that we create on our website.
How do we categorize funds if we are using it to offset the shortage in transportation funding?
If you need to use funds for transportation, those would go under 12 other. That would be the very last one. Now keep in mind that our legislature may be addressing this issue once the session starts and may be providing additional funding, but I know we've received this one a lot. You had additional transportation costs to deliver food packets to students, to deliver educational packets. Those are allowable expenditures, so if you want to use your funds for that, that would go under the last one, other.
What would we check for food delivery service costs?
That one as well would go under other. So if you have additional costs above and beyond what you've received from the state to create and deliver food packets for students during this pandemic, those would also go under the last one, other.
Hold on just a moment. I apologize, just a moment. Since I missed the first few minutes, when will we receive this packet?
We are going to be, school superintendents are going to get an email immediately following this training with the link, and then today it will also be publicly available on our website.
Do you fill this form out one time or each time you would like reimbursement?
You only fill this form out one time. This is the form, the one and only form and application that you fill out, assuring the state that you are only going to use these funds for allowable purposes. Make sure you read those assurance carefully, that you will complete all required reports, that you will continue to pay all staff, so read through those carefully, but you are agreeing to all of these assurances. You are giving us how you intend to spend these funds, addressing how you are going to address your students' learning needs once school resumes. And then if things change, you will just note those in the quarterly reports. And as long as you are using these funds for allowable purposes, then you will be fine.
I understand pre-K salary would be allowable expense. Is this also true for after-school program wages?
Yes, after-school programs are an allowable activity under ESSER. So you would check the ESSER box and then explain in the text box what you are doing by providing an after-school program.
Want to clarify, this is a follow-up, this would be for wages paid during the closure for after-school program, not for a summer after-school program going forward.
Yes, either way, both would be allowable. So you would just click the ESSER box and explain that in the text box.
Okay. Is the ESSER funds and timeline included in the plan for reopening the schools for the governor? It seems difficult to reopen schools without the availability of these funds resources.
Yes, there has been a team created of DPI staff from the governor's office, representation from the field to create a reopening plan. There are 4 buckets, and one of those buckets is funding. So yes, that guidance will also intertwine the ESSER funds that are available to districts.
Will we receive financial coding guidance?
Yes, you will. As Ann mentioned, that guidance, that coding information is in the guidance that will be posted on our website today.
In a title co-op, does the LEA make the purchases for both districts?
Yes, the fiscal agent must maintain fiscal control of the dollars, just as with private schools. And so the non-eligible co-op built school district will need to work with their fiscal agent, and the fiscal agent has to make those purchases for the non-eligible building.
When can we apply, and when will this be released for us to apply?
It will be released immediately following this training. If you want to apply today, you may do so.
Are these funds only K through 12, or can it be used for pre-K as well?
Preschool is an allowable expenditure under ESSER. It's an allowable expenditure under IDEA. And so if you are doing a preschool for special education students, you would check the IDEA box. If you're doing a preschool program for general education, you would check ESSER and then describe your preschool program in the text box.
Will there be separate accounting codes sent by Adam Tesher to track ESSER expenditures?
Yes, as we've mentioned, the coding provided by Adam is in the guidance.
Get money first, then submit reimbursements, right?
That is correct. The money you will, by submitting parts A through D, once you get your approval letter, as Rebecca indicated, your total allocation is placed in your account. The money is there for you. You spend it and then you claim reimbursement.
Okay, so I believe that answers the question. So we have the money in our account and then tell you how it was spent?
That is correct.
If the superintendent registered and listed the business manager as a secondary, does the business manager still need to register?
Rebecca, can you answer that one, please?
Yes, all parties who will be utilizing the web grant system do need to be registered individually, and the authorized signer for your grant award notification must be a registered user.
When you refer to the ledger report, what specifically are you looking for? The account listing that shows budget and expense listing?
Yes, you will need to submit your detailed ledger, and you do this for your title funds all the time. So with that final claim, you will submit a detailed ledger of your accounting so that we can verify that all of the expenditures are allowable.
Can the application be modified after approval if the LEA's needs change and we want to spend on another allowable expense?
No, we will not be opening up this application process. Once you complete it and you submit it and it has been approved, then if you have changes in how you're going to use the funds, that will simply be addressed through the quarterly report. You don't have to tell us if you're going to slightly modify how you're going to use the funds. As long as you are spending the dollars on an allowable activity as outlined in Appendix B, you will be fine. You will simply list that on the quarterly report, and that is what we will monitor to ensure that districts are spending for allowable purchases only. No revisions to the application.
Can these funds be used to offset the loss of transportation funds for next year, 2021, since we will not be able to claim miles and rides from March 13th to the end of this year?
Yes, potentially, but as I mentioned before, you might want to wait and see what our legislature is going to do. They may be providing some supplemental dollars, and then that would free up these ESSER funds to be used for something else. And again, you have until September 30th, 2022 to spend them. So you might want to wait and see what the legislature is going to do before you use these ESSER funds for that purpose.
Because of the high cost resulting from the staffing needs and the manner in which meals were prepared and delivered, our school lunch program lost money providing meals to students even after National School Lunch Program reimbursement. Can the net loss during the COVID-19 emergency in the lunch program be claimed with these funds? If yes, under what category does this fall?
Yes, you can use the funds for that purpose, and it would go under the last bullet, other.
Are the allowable use of funds the same for the non-public?
As Ann indicated, we believe so, but we are waiting. They have not sent us specific guidance regarding the private school. And so we are waiting to receive additional information. Ann will send out information to the district and the private school officials once we get that information.
We are operating a no-charge daycare for essential emergency workers. Can the costs for that be claimed? And if so, which category does that fall?
Yes, any emergency item that, or any emergency cost that you encumbered because of this pandemic can be included, and that one would go there under number 12. You could put that under other as well.
Are there supplant rules?
The supplement supplant, there is no supplement supplant provision with these ESSER funds. However, the U.S. Department of Ed has reiterated in the webinars that we've participated on, and that is in this guidance, that this funding is not meant to replace state aid. And our governor has kept us whole. So things that are being paid for by our state legislature should not be covered with these ESSER funds. However, if you had overages, you had additional costs in transportation, additional costs in food service, additional costs to pay staff to come in and create packets, then those additional costs brought forth by the pandemic can be paid for with these dollars.
Our fee-based before and after school program didn't operate, and those employees filed for and received unemployment. Are unemployment costs for that program eligible for this grant? What category would that be under?
We will review this question and we will provide an answer and add it to our Q&A.
Do private schools complete the web grant application?
No, private schools and the co-op schools cannot be the fiscal agent for these dollars. So they will need to work with their public school district to ascertain their services. Only the public school district completes the web grant reimbursement.
What is the definition of contract?
A contract is when you pay for a service. If you are paying for professional development, if you have a contract to lease computers, if you are paying someone or you have a contract with them, then you need to keep close records, because we do believe that that is a specific question that will be included on a report that we'll need to submit to the U.S. Department of Ed. That was the same with the ARA fund several years ago. So keep very good records of any contracts you enter into.
Is this webinar recorded for later viewing?
Yes, this webinar is being recorded.
Will we have to use a separate chart of accounts for these funds, or does your office have that created already?
Yes, the accounting codes are listed in our guidance, which will be released today.
Please address neglected and delinquent sites in regard to this funding.
Neglected and delinquent programming is a component of ESSA. And so if you choose to use your funds to help with neglected and delinquent programming, that is allowable. You would check the ESSA box, and then you would give a more detailed description in the text box below.
Can we utilize funds for parent or family engagement?
Absolutely. Parent-family engagement should be considered a priority. Most definitely the funds can be used for that purpose.
What will DPI's discretionary dollars be used for?
DPI is doing a statewide survey, and so all of you participating on this call should be receiving that survey. We're mass sending it to teachers, administrators, parents, community members, other state agencies, our partners. We are gathering input on how you would like to see the funds spent, and then we will review the survey results and make those decisions.
When does the application process open up?
The application process will be opened up immediately following this training.
Since it is the authorized representative filling out and submitting assurances, why are they going to superintendent?
Most often, the superintendent is the authorized representative for the school district.
Can we use this to make up for transportation costs, because we can't count miles or riders after March 13th?
Again, we've addressed that. You may want to wait and see what the state legislature does, but yes, it is allowable.
Do you need to pay full bus contract amounts if you gave half payments while not running buses?
That requirement to continue to pay all staff and contracts is a little bit soft. They want you to make a good faith effort, and to the extent practicable. If you read the assurance, it's a little soft in that as long as you're making a good faith effort. So as long as you have worked with your busing company, and since they did not provide, since the students weren't in school, you negotiated that they would get half payments, then that is certainly fine.
Is there a deadline by which we must have this application submitted?
We have not placed a deadline on the submission. We would strongly encourage schools to have discussion on how they're going to spend the funds. Submit the certification package signing the assurances and giving intended uses of the funds. So we would like to get the applications approved. But again, if you need to make adjustments over the course of the next 2 years, you can do so, and you would just indicate any slight changes you've made in the quarterly reports.
If we need to have students and staff wear masks, where would we claim this expense?
If you're unsure where to claim expenses such as that, you can always click that other box. If you read through the list and it doesn't appear to be covered in any of those categories, you can always use the other. Just make sure if you click the other box, in the text box, you provide a description of what you're doing.
March 13th was our last day at school. Is it correct that we can claim any allowable expenses after that date?
That is correct.
Can you clarify the funds question? We will have the funds in our account and just report how they are spent, or will be like title funds allocated to use and reimbursed through a drawdown or request?
Yes, we are using a reimbursement process. So you will indicate how you're going to spend the funds. When you get your approval, you can then spend the dollars, and then once you've spent them, you ask for reimbursement.
When is the application due?
Again, we've covered that. We encourage you to submit as soon as possible. We have not set a specific due date.
What is the mileage reimbursement amount per mile for food deliveries?
We can check with Adam, and we can add that to our Q&A.
Is Web Grants the same as grants.com?
No. Web Grants is a specific grants management system that the Department of Public Instruction has purchased.
Since it is the authorized rep, wait a minute, sorry, that one's already been read. I think that's it.
Okay, we thank you for participating in our training today. Again, maybe give us 10 minutes or so, but if you check our website this afternoon, you will see the application package, Part A through D, posted on our website. The guidance will be posted on our website, and this recorded training will be posted on our website. And if you are a school superintendent, you will receive a personalized email from Superintendent Basler within the next hour. Thank you for your participation.